In this War Department print from the early 1870s, significant storm systems originating almost anywhere within U.S. territory are tracked almost inevitably toward New England.
I felt like a pinball.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And I felt like, there was a point where I had to plant and then plant because it was going aside your muscles.
Yeah.
And then you're hit, and I was picking rocks to lean on.
Yeah. And there were times all you could do was just
hunker down. I was straddled.
Exactly.
I was hunkered over, and I was just screaming.
Yeah.
I really was scared we weren't going to make it to the hut. I really was.
The Presidential Traverse is a classic northeastern hike. South to north, 20.3 miles. 7 required summits, several more optional. 8,263 feet of total ascent. 8,843 feet of total descent. Not as easy as it sounds.
My friend Mike here sent a group text message out to our friends who are supposed to meet us on the other side of the mountain at Mount Washington. Just sent a quick text message saying, hey, we're all good here. Hopefully you guys are good. Show up here, only a one-word answer that just says abort.
Gita and I met in New Hampshire, marrying in August 1984. During our honeymoon, based out of the Dana Place Inn, Pinkham Notch, we hiked up through legendary Tuckerman Ravine to the summit of Mount Washington, highest peak in the Presidential Range. During the next 26 years, we hiked most every weekend, in all seasons. We purchased a lot of wool and the best gear we could afford at the time, as we alternated the roles of breadwinner and graduate student. The passage of decades made us ever so gradually less tolerant of New Hampshire's winter. Raised in Florida, we had been bold to relocate here in the first place. In 2010, we succumbed to New Mexico's enchantments. elk instead of moose, mountain lions, dazzling light and space, the ruins of Chaco, short and easy winters under blue, blue skies, another planet underground, strange lights in the sky, flight without wings, an amazing, disturbing, brilliant, and dark scientific and technological history. And a remarkable group of friends.
The trailhead started as the Leukemia Lymphoma Society Hike for Discovery.
There was a group of us from that adventure that decided we enjoyed our company and wanted to keep hiking together.
I was fortunate enough to be introduced to the trailheads at this gentleman's birthday party, where I met Clarissa and actually got one of Clarissa's cards and followed up, and I've been hiking with these people to my benefit ever since.
I met the core group of the trailheads when I started hiking with Hike for Discovery. Clarissa and Marlene and Liz Huffman, and the person who would become my future husband, Richard Costello.
After Gita and I decided to organize a Trailheads attempt at a presidential traverse, we published a PDF which we sent to trailheads who expressed interest in the excursion. In this extended description of the multi-day hike, we proposed a couple of ground rules to manage group risks. Rule number 1. In White Mountain tradition, a 10% loss of life is considered acceptable in a group hike. But with fewer than 10 hikers, the loss of even one exceeds the acceptable 10% standard. So although we truly hate to dictate at Bousquet and DeCassola, no one on this trip will be considered expendable. Little did we guess that the trip leaders would be the chief beneficiaries of this ground rule.
Day one was fabulous. It was definitely more challenging than I thought. The rocks and the route was definitely more challenging, which I actually liked.
of people coming from other places tend to underestimate the White Mountain trails and their difficulty. A, because there's almost no switchbacks. They tend to just go straight up the mountain. And B, because they're extremely rocky. From the summit of Mount Jackson, we catch a glimpse of the rest of the traverse.
We took longer than I thought, or I think than any of us thought, to get to the first hut, but we made it. All was well, the weather was good, and fun was had by all.
With 10 minutes to spare before dinner. Nice.
Mizpah Hut, built in 1964 and ominously engineered to withstand 200-mile-per-hour winds.
It was so nice to be served food at a hut and have a nice, comfortable place to stay. And then the journey changed.
All of us are very experienced hikers, and we were well equipped. So the weather report wasn't that daunting. We were concerned, of course. We dressed up in our foul weather gear and had warm clothing and so on. But wind speeds, up to 30 miles per hour, even 40, 45 miles per hour is nothing that extraordinary in the White Mountains, and we were fully prepared for that. What we didn't count on was that it would get much worse than that. Mount Pierce is the first official summit, the Presidential Traverse, if you're heading south to north, named after Franklin Pierce, the only president of the United States to date to come from New Hampshire, and generally regarded by historians as one of the worst presidents of all time. What we don't know at this point on Mount Pierce, the rain coming down lightly and the wind being pretty moderate, is that conditions are going to grow increasingly worse until we're basically stopped by the weather. Once we emerged from the dwarf forest north of Mount Pierce between it and Mount Eisenhower, it became clear that the wind was even stronger. Mount Eisenhower, Gita and I had a very brief consultation and agreed that the wind was too dangerous for us to go to the summit.
Our day from hell. And the winds got really bad and the rain was incredible. And I remember I had every single item of clothing that I could have on and a shell, and every single thing got soaked.
Eisenhower, where my buddy Mike and I decided to summit, which ended up being a very bad idea because we were the only ones up there and it was extremely dangerous. Winds were well over 60 miles an hour, raining in your face, and no cover at all.
As we went down past the Eisenhower summit, it really did start getting serious. As we progressed, the wind just got worse and worse.
I was told it's gonna rain.
It was about here where a really powerful gust of wind caught me. It was a hard fall.
Wash my sins.
My temple area had landed on a rock. I felt really sick to my stomach. About a minute later, I threw up. After I'd recovered somewhat, Clarissa and I continued on. We'd gotten a little bit separated from the rest of the group, but we could still see them ahead of us. Until we reached kind of a low point as we were approaching Mount Franklin. Just in this little bit of a dip, we could see the rest of the group across the other side, but I'll speak for myself, there was no way I could get there. I would stand up and get knocked down, stand up, get knocked down again.
Yeah, I felt like a pinball.
I tried crawling on my belly and I'd just get rolled right over.
Point where I had to plant and then plant because it was blowing us sideways.
I was told it's gonna
My
rain.
pole cracked in half, just broke in half.
At one point I remember I was literally flat on the ground and I could see pebbles being sucked out of the mud right in front of my eyes. I don't know if it was the wind or the change in air pressure or what the hell was going on.
And then you hit, and I was picking rocks to lean on.
And there were times all you could do was just
Right, hunker down. I was rattled.
Exactly.
I was hunkered over, and I was just screaming. I really was scared we weren't going to make it to the hut. I really was.
The wind actually picked me up and threw me probably about 15 feet off the trail.
So then when you got lost, that's not when you hit your head?
No.
Oh, really? That's where we saw that.
Clarissa and I found a narrow depression where we were able to lay down side by side, and by yelling very loudly, we were able to communicate. This is when we decided that we should probably just try to shelter. It was impossible to get through that little bit of a gap, that little bit of a dip before getting to the next group, and it appeared to us that they were also pinned down.
And we would just brace ourselves in our poles and move like that far, and then brace ourselves and move like this far.
We did find a nice wide spot on the trail, which was protected by a bank of crumbles. We were able to lay down with our heads backed into the crumbles, and it really gave pretty good protection. Clarissa had purchased a map at Mizpah Hut, and turned out it was Tyvek. So what we did is we put that underneath us, and then we got her sleeping bag, which was a little more accessible than mine. The rain was actually, we could see it just kind of going over our heads. It really wasn't hitting us because the crumbles was absorbing all the rain at our level.
We had the packs next to us on either side, I think.
Yeah, that's right. We put the packs alongside of us so that they would give us more protection. knew that Clarissa was thinking about the situation. I was thinking about the situation, and didn't seem to be a need to speak. There was actually a pretty comfortable silence between us. And when we finally did speak, I think we both agreed at that point that we were likely to survive.
Yes.
I remember briefly sort of contemplating that this might be it.
Me too.
And I have to say, it didn't seem all that awful. It wasn't like I felt a whole bunch of regrets or, I thought, well, I love being here, so. Of course, I had a concussion at the time, so might be different if it happened today. Every once in a while, one of us would sit up to check on the rest of the group across the low point where the winds were worst. We wanted them to move on. Clarissa and I were relatively secure at this point. It was the rest of the group that was getting battered by the wind.
And then the worst was when my pole snapped. It was like, oh my God. It just was like candy. It was like.
Well, mine bent just because, it got caught and then I got thrown, so I bent it.
Come on, I do hardcore skiing. Really
I will say.
And nothing like that ever.
It was we were being blown this way. I know there's some crumbles there, but it might have been that I hit myself on this one or this one, because what would happen is you just get blown into the rocks.
I think Gita had the most difficult decision of any of us that day because she had to decide whether to observe our original rule that the group would always stick together, especially under bad conditions, or whether to break the rule and take the rest of the group to safety. She made the correct decision to break the original rule.
I remember we took inventory. I was taking inventory in my head of all the things in my pack and all the survival gear we had, and I thought, well, we've got a lot of gear here. Let's stay pretty warm. And because the rain was going past us instead of falling on us, that helped a lot too.
Yes, it did. Gita's group still had a bit of a slog to get to the safety of Lakes of the Clouds hut.
We think we have wind in New Mexico, and we do, but nothing like that. I didn't know that wind like that was even possible.
So people were going pretty much one at a time, and I was watching them, and it was just taking a long time. Finally, I just figured I had to go. It was getting late. And what I did, kind of watching everyone, was just to relax and kind of go with the wind and not try to hold out against it and kind of fly with the wind.
The Appalachian Mountain Club was only 24 years old when it scheduled the opening of its annual meeting Saturday, June 30th, 1900, at the summit of Mount Washington. Most of the invited rode to the summit on the Cog Railway because weather above treeline was horrendous that weekend. Terrible wind, rain, sleet, snow. Summer in the presidentials, in other words. One AMC member, William B. Curtis, revered as the founder of the American Amateur Sports Movement, co-founder of the New York Athletic Club, was undeterred by weather reports, determined to reach the summit under his own power. Father Bill, as he was known, accompanied by a much younger athlete, Alan Ormsby, followed the Crawford Path over the peaks later known as Pierce and Eisenhower. In a waterproof register on the latter summit, one of them scribbled, "Rain, clouds, and wind, 60 miles, cold." They met two men coming the other direction who urged them ineffectively to abort the hike. Curtis died of exposure near Lakes of the Clouds, while Ormsby made it almost to the safety at the summit. The search for the missing men was delayed until weather permitted, 2 days. This notorious tragedy prompted the AMC to erect a simple emergency shelter at the foot of Mount Monroe the following year, and the original Lakes of the Clouds hut in 1915.
But we were wet and cold, and the wind was just something I'd never experienced before. So
You kind of got past the worst of it, and then you went faster, and it was like I was still in the really bad part.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, if I could just get up there, just get up there.
We saw the hut and we just beelined it. Finally,
But
we just finally
You
went.
guys go booking it because I mean, it's not.
It was just at the very end there.
Yeah.
at the end of that day, I was walking with Gita, and we got almost in sight of the hut, and she decided to wait for you and Clarissa. And I went on to try to see who else ended up in the hut. And I remember walking through the door of the hut, and you know, the old expression, like a drowned rat. I mean, that was me. And we waited there for a while, and everyone else finally showed up. Gita showed up, but the two of you didn't.
It was quite a surprise when Zach and Mike happened upon us.
We get to you and your friend laying there in the bush, and we would have done anything to help, but I think we were in the same state, just not laying down, we were just standing up.
I bought a poncho that's for like $5.99 at the convenience store, and this is pretty much all I have left of it. The wind destroyed it.
And we decided to get to the hut as fast as possible so we can get people back to you guys. We thought that was the best route.
They said they saw two people back on the trail, sort of hunkered down in a storm position, and we figured it was the two of you. And almost immediately, 3 through hikers, guys that looked like they hadn't slept many nights on the indoors in the last few months, just immediately put their stuff back on and took off. And then the hut master really appeared to be experienced, put together 2 other people, and they took off. So there were 6 people out on the trail looking for you.
The group from the hut arrived, and I stood up, and I was able to walk, but I was still extremely unstable on my feet. In retrospect, I think that was part of the problem I was having in the wind, although everybody had problems. I was able to walk the whole way, but I continued to kind of stumble, and so somebody had to support me from the side.
And finally you came back, and we were all happy about that.
I was slurring my words, my thoughts were very slow, I was speaking slowly, and I didn't really realize any of that. At the hut, I was greeted by Dr. Whitaker, who we had met the day before at Mizpah Hut. He gave me a neurological examination and diagnosed the concussion. It basically prescribed that I be awakened every 2 hours during the night, which is standard treatment. The hut crew made some adjustments so that our group could all just be in one bunk room. That made it easier for Gita to check on me during the night. She set her watch and woke up every 2 hours. I didn't actually sleep that night. That was an interesting thing. I stayed awake the entire night. The weather cleared by breakfast, and after that, the inmates of the hut went about their plans for the day. A through hiker finished his chores to pay for his lodging. Some of the crew installed a new septic system. After their interviews, Zach and Mike headed down to rejoin the rest of their group.
Oh, yes. Let's get outside here.
My friends discovered that their gear pockets were still full of rainwater as they prepared for their hike to the summit of Mount Washington.
So we're all just moon him real quick. That would make an X-ray. Hi, Joe.
I was supposed to take it easy for the day, but I interpreted doctor's orders liberally enough that I ended up on the Camel Trail, one of my favorite places on the planet. A long time ago, Gita and I adopted the Camel Trail, coming here 3 times a year, in spring and late summer, to perform basic maintenance. One of the few wet areas on the trail, and we did do a significant amount of work here a couple of years ago that has paid off. Gita built this pretty nondescript scree wall. Doesn't look like much now. It was a little more evident when this was all mud. Put in some drainage underneath these stones, which are carefully fitted together. There isn't a lot of dwarf forest on the Camel Trail, but occasionally we did have to brush it out a bit, just to the minimal extent necessary for passage. It's been pretty dry recently, but this is one of the hardest places for us to keep the trail dry, because there's ledge all around. There's just no place to drain to. Though only 7/10 of a mile long, the Camel Trail has over 100 cairns, or one about every 36 feet. I think the first time Gita and I were on the Camel Trail, we came up this way from this direction. It was near sunset. Everything was fogged in, the wind was blowing, hurricane strength, knock you over. And we were literally finding our way cairn to cairn, so our first experience on this trail was that these cairns were really critical. Some are well built, some were not. We had to maintain them all and improve the ones we could. Here's the geological feature, incidentally, which gives the Camel Trail its name. Another of my favorite spots where the trail parallels a notable rift in the bedrock. This is one of the toughest spots. This is a major boulder field, and it's pretty dangerous. The work in there to fix that would be much larger than what Gita and I can do with hand tools. But just ahead of me here, the holes get to be huge, so that a slip could easily result in a broken leg or worse. This stuff. Well, there's a part of me that would like to just stay here tonight. The air is still right now. It's a little chilly, but not too bad. Pretty mild, really, for Mount Washington. But 11 years later, no idea at all how I intended to finish that thought. I'm just thankful back in the present day for our hut reservation tonight. These are fun places, and some jester has seen fit to hike up scores of duckies perched everywhere. It's funny, but perhaps unsurprising, I didn't notice them yesterday. While I lounged on the Camel Trail today, the summit team bagged Mount Washington. 'Cause 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 ' and, even better for nerds like us, enjoyed a member's tour of the historic Mount Washington Observatory. To our amazement, conditions yesterday at the observatory and at Lakes of the Clouds hut were exactly as forecast. And no one offers a minimally plausible theory for the prolonged and severe tempest we experienced near Mount Franklin. Hiking is a strange business. I think most hikers would agree. Especially in mountains as rough as these, a certain amount of discomfort and suffering is inevitable. Sometimes I think there is still a great philosophy of hiking waiting to be written, centered on the universal problem of suffering. All I know for certain is that tonight I'm a happy man. The weather for our big day could not have been more ideal. We're planning to hike from Lakes of the Cloud Hut to Madison Hut. We got an early start. We're making good progress. Occasionally, real life, like art, offers foreshadowing. We went underneath the Cog Railway tracks and got on the Gulfside Trail. We were a little past where it butts into the Jewel Trail, which goes down to the Marsh Station. Got a couple hundred yards past that, and everything was going fine. Everybody seemed strong. We were in good shape. Gita was doing lead, I was doing sweep.
I was walking behind her, but I was giving her a lot of wide berth, and we going really slow. And there was no tippy rock, there was no kind of obstacle in the way, and she just fell. Her leg gave out, and she just fell and kind of turned and landed on the ground.
After she rested a bit, she reported she couldn't walk unless she kept her knee completely straight. So she tried walking a little bit that way. It was very hard for her to keep her legs straight enough, her knees straight enough. And so basically what we did is we took a SAM splint and a walking brace that Clarissa donated, and taped it all together, put it on her legs so that it would keep her knees straight. With that, she was able to walk a little bit better, but there's some pretty rough sections over there. There's sections where the rock is just all broken up, and there's big gaps, and some of the rocks are tippy. It's a pretty poor treadway.
Has this happened before? Except you wear this brace.
No,
So that's somebody else's.
yes.
Are you?
We just tried it
Oh,
to see if it would help. Yeah.
yeah, but didn't help.
Well, no, it did.
Did.
I could move a little bit as long as I kept my legs straight.
Okay.
You can put weight on it if it's straight.
Okay.
Not bent.
I see. So just totally sails when it's bent
Yeah.
and with pain.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the group was fantastic. People broke up the contents of her pack, so she had no pack on, took all the weight away from her, offered lots of encouragement. I'd say that everybody remained in good spirits. We worked together to kind of formulate a plan.
Mike Pelshot has spent 40 years working on the top of New Hampshire's highest peak, but this week he retired as the manager of the Mount Washington State Park. As a technical rock climber, advanced EMT, building handyman, and state park employee, Pelshot knows the mountain better than almost anyone else and has helped rescue nearly 1,000 people from its dangerous slopes.
so we reached the Cog Railway, only halfway to the summit. This is where Pelchat has arranged for pickup. I need to emphasize, such pickups are extremely rare. Should not be counted on. Without Pelchat's personal intervention, we would never have expected the train to stop for us.